Hello everyone. Welcome to the March session in our monthly webinar series. Today's presentation is entitled Finding Your Balance, 8 Secrets to Smooth Out the Ride of Your Overcommitted Life. My name is Eric Steiner, and along with Aaron Griffin, we'll be your host for today's webinar session. Now, before I introduce our presenter and we begin the presentation, let me go over a few key items with you. The presentation will last approximately 45 to 50 minutes. At the end of that period, we will have time for a question and answer session. You can submit your questions for the Q&A session using the space provided in your webinar user control panel. Now, once the presentation begins, you won't hear from me again until the halfway point when I alert our presenter to the time. If you're experiencing a technical issue or have a question not related to the presentation, you can reach out to Eric or Aaron using the same process and space for submitting Q&A questions or the chat window in your control panel. We'll do our best to resolve your concerns in the background without interrupting the presentation for everyone else. Now, before we start the presentation, let me give you some background on today's presenter. Cindy Loughran is Chief Change Champion and Fear Blaster at Cindy Loughran Coaching. She teaches clients the dynamics and process for transformation so they can stop doing battle with change and become empowered to create happier, healthier, more successful, and more fulfilled lives. A masterful certified professional coach, certified group coach, and an engaging speaker, she is known for her insight, directness, and humor, helping people see the truths about themselves without judgment. Cindy has helped hundreds of corporate leaders, solopreneurs, small business owners, and women in transition move from wishing it to living it. Before Cindy's entrepreneurial spirit took her out of the corporate arena, she spent 9 years in leadership positions in human resource management. Drawing from her passion for developing the full potential in others and her success as an internal corporate partner and advisor, Cindy established her own life coaching and leadership development business in 1986. Recognized as one of Boston's top 10 coaches by Women's Business Boston, she's been a contributor to national trade and business journals and blogs and has been a guest on several blog radio shows. Cindy earned a degree in communication studies from the University of Vermont. Married with 2 sons, Cindy lives in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. She does one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and facilitates mastermind groups to help clients get the results they say they want in their lives, in their careers, and small businesses. Cindy, I'll now turn the presentation over to you so we can begin.
Great. Thank you, Eric, and welcome, everyone. I am so glad to be here today because we are going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, balance. I don't know anyone who isn't searching for this notion of balance. We're all living overcommitted, busy lives. So first, I want to offer a disclaimer. There is no magic answer to the issue of balance. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Balance is about choices. And even though we often feel like we don't have any choice, particularly when we're feeling particularly out of balance, I want to show you today that in fact you do. So balance is a responsibility. To not choose to do something when you're feeling out of balance is to make a choice. It's a choice that has consequences and costs, as many of you may have felt either for yourselves or you've seen in others. So during this session, I'm going to give you a framework for how you think about balance, tips and tools and processes for bringing your life into more balance, and a challenge to make some different choices as to how you create a greater sense of balance in your life. So what do we mean by balance? Nothing is a problem merely because of the amount of time we spend doing it. It's only a problem if the amount of time we spend takes us away from the important aspects of our life and saps us of our vitality. Think about things that you do that seem to suck the life out of you. And then think about the things that you do that when you're doing them, time seems to just disappear. You get lost in them, and no matter how long you spend, you feel energized and excited. So it isn't really about time. My definition, balance is about energy. We need to be doing things in our lives that give us a balance of energy out, energy expended, and energy in, energy renewed. So it might take only 15 minutes of quiet time to de-stress and then come back to a situation with your kids or your boss or a client fully present and calm for the rest of the day. Or a brisk 30-minute walk might clear your head and allow you to come up with a really creative solution to a problem that might take you hours to resolve if you labor over it. Exercising 30 minutes 3 times a week might give you enough physical and emotional energy to fuel you for the whole week. So I want to just emphasize that while time has a great deal to do with balance, the end goal is not to figure out exactly how we can spend the same amount of time in all the different areas of our life, but how we can balance the energy in and the energy out to sustain us through all of those things. So we all know the cost of being out of balance. Our relationships, our emotions, our weight, our families, our health. And in fact, being out of balance can cost us a lot of money. We have time away from work. We have illnesses and medical costs. We have the cost of low productivity. So it's an expensive problem. In essence, when we're out of balance, we walk around tired and stressed and grumpy. And we don't like being around ourselves, and certainly people around us don't particularly enjoy us. So in order to be balanced or to get into balance, we first need to get a clear picture of our current situation. And then we need to create a clear vision of what we want in our lives. And then we need to be acting and being in a way that's consistent with that vision. We can't wait around to do things as soon as. You know, you've heard yourself say it. I'll do that as soon as things settle down, as soon as I have more money in the bank, as soon as the kids go off to school, as soon as I'm married, as soon as I'm divorced. You know, we're always waiting for as soon as to happen, but we really need to start now, and then the as soon as will start to show up. If we don't find balance, we feel stressed and unfulfilled, and we give up on the things that were once really important to us. We become reactive. We become at the mercy of, instead of in charge of the circumstances of our lives. So let's begin by sort of taking stock of your level of satisfaction in 12 areas of life. And what I'd like for you to do right now is to take out a piece of blank paper and draw this circle. At the end of the webinar, I will tell you how you can access this and some other resources on my website. But for right now, if you'll just draw this circle on a piece of paper. And what I'd like you to do is put a dot in the appropriate place for each segment, each area of life, that indicates your current level of satisfaction. So what I mean by that, by satisfaction, is not the amount of time you spend doing each of the things, but how happy are you with how much time and the kinds of things that you're doing. So let's say, for example, that you're really happy with your career and you spend a lot of time at it. Well, then you'd be putting a dot sort of closer to the outside edge, near the 10. But let's say, for example, in the area of spirituality, you're not very spiritual. You don't spend a lot of time doing things that are spiritual, and that's perfectly okay with you. That would also be a high number. If, on the other hand, you'd like to be more engaged in spiritual activity, but you're not, then your satisfaction level would be low. So take a few seconds and just put those dots where they belong. And you'll see that on the bottom left, around 7 o'clock, there's an other. So if there's something that's missing that you want to add in, feel free to put that in there. Okay. And now what I'd like you to do is take your pencil and connect the dots. Just go from one to the next, connecting the dots. Now, when most people do this exercise, they come out with a circle that's one of two things. It's either very rough or it's very small. So imagine if that circle, if you were to cut it out, a very rough circle, were the tires on your car. Your life would be a pretty rough road. It's bumpy because you're doing sort of ups and downs of life in terms of your levels of satisfaction. That's what a lot of people's circles look like. And then a lot of people have circles that are very small. And what that means is that you're working really hard and not getting very far. Your little engine, your tires, your wheels have to go around in so many more revolutions to get somewhere than it would if the wheel were larger. And it generally means that you're playing smaller than your potential. You're not playing up to your full power and probably experiencing little satisfaction for lots of work. Either way, rough or small, it's a rough road. It's a hard journey. The ideal, the goal, is to be working with large, smooth wheels, balanced wheels. So how do you go about smoothing out that ride? If you go back to your circle and choose one area that's important to you and where your satisfaction level is low, and take a look at that and put a mark in that same wedge that indicates where you'd like your level of satisfaction to be. And it doesn't have to be a 10. An incremental step change would be fine. Maybe you don't want perfection. And by the way, if you ever get to the point where it's a 10, you'll probably be standing at a plateau looking out saying, oh, there's something bigger out there for me to do. And you'll be expanding your circle even more. But for right now, just identify where you'd like one area to be. And imagine if you were living in more balance and you had a higher level of satisfaction in that area. Just imagine what it would feel like. What would you feel like if that were going on? And take a second to jot that down. Because sometimes recognizing how good it's going to feel helps create the motivation for taking action. And then answer the question, why is this important to you? Why is it important to put some effort into shifting in this area? What's the payoff for you and for the people around you? At work, at home, in your community. And write those things down too. So let me just summarize where we've been so far. The first step in creating balance is to know where you are now, your present reality. The second is to get clear on where you want to go. What's your destination? The third is to get a sense of what it would be like and why. That's the motivation. And then the fourth step, the next step that we're going to go to, is to figure out how the heck you're going to get there. So if you write down on a piece of paper that area of life, and again, this sheet will be available to you for access at the end of the webinar. If you write down that area of life that you just were thinking about, and just brainstorm, make a list of the things that you might do if you were going to move this farther out on the wheel, if you were going to increase your level of satisfaction. So, for some people, if physical environment, for example, was a low satisfaction and important, you might say, I would clean off my desk. I would clean out my car. I would clean my closets. Money and finances, might mean I would get a handle on my finances. I would refinance my house. Anything that you could think of that you might do in order to move the dial. And if you don't know what you would do, in fact, that's the problem, you don't know what to do, then the thing to write down is figure out what to do in order to increase my satisfaction in this area. Because one of the things that stops us from taking action is not knowing how. And when we don't know how, we just give up. We get resigned to the fact it'll never change. But figuring out how to do something is, in fact, a really important action. So now you're looking at a list of things to do, and you're saying, how am I ever going to do these things when I'm already too busy? That's what brought me here to this webinar in the first place. So in order to make room for the things that are really important to you, the things that you just put on the list, you have to clear the decks of some of the other things. And preferably those things will be the things that are sucking the energy out of you. So to do that, we need to get a sense of how we're spending our time right now. So if you look at this matrix that's on the screen, and you may want to draw this on a piece of paper, what you see is that there are some activities that are both important and urgent. Those are things that tend to have a specific deadline. They often are things that involve other people's needs. They're external to us often. And then there are those things in quadrant 2 that are important but not urgent. And the nature of those things is that they're things that generally are not time-bound. There isn't a specific deadline. They may be big, time-consuming things. They tend to involve us and perhaps no one else. And they end up on the back burner because the urgent and important things take precedence. Then in quadrant 3, we're looking at things that are urgent but not important. And what that means is that they're really important to someone else, but they're not really very important toward getting the job done, getting goals met. So it might be um, getting a report done that really isn't that important. It might be answering a question for someone, handling an interruption that really isn't all that important. And finally, there are those things in quadrant 4 that are not urgent and not important. And those are things like gossip, surfing the web, checking email 15 times a day, getting lost in Facebook. And it's not to say that taking some breaks aren't important, but sometimes when we overdo those things, we spend a tremendous amount of time or waste a lot of time in those not urgent, not important stages. I know I do. So if you want to create more balance in your life, you're going to have to make time for the things that are not urgent but important. And they probably are those things that you wrote down on your list. So after the webinar, what I'd like to suggest is that you complete this matrix by actually noticing how you're spending your time now and which quadrant your activities belong in. And in order to make more time for the things in quadrant 2, you're going to have to make some changes. And you'll notice there that it says big rocks. Let me explain that. So there was a time management expert who was speaking to a class about time management. And he pulled out a jar and he filled it with fist-sized rocks. And he held it up and he asked the group, "Is this jar full?" And they all said yes. And so he said, "Really?" And he proceeded to pour a handful of small stones into the jar. And the small stones settled in the spaces between the bigger rocks. And again, he asked the class, "Is the jar full?" And although the class thought it was, they were on to him, so they said, "No, I guess not." And so he pulled out some sand, and he poured sand, and it went down and filtered in between the stones and the rocks. And then he put water in, and he filled it up to the brim with water. And said to the class, "Now, class, the jar is full." So what would have happened had he started with the water? We often start with the small stuff, and we don't have time for the big stuff. The big rocks are the things that are really important. And when we fill up our time and our energy with all of the smaller things, the less important things, we don't ever find time for the big rocks. So we need to find time. We need to put the big rocks in first and then work the rest of our things around it. So how do we make time for those Q2 activities? How do we make time for the big rocks? Well, we have to take the time from Q3 and Q4. So the first step is to determine what's really important to you. Allow yourself to consider this. Know that you deserve it, that it's not selfish. Check out your priorities, if it's at work with your boss, if it's at home with your spouse or partner, teammates. Let them know, this is really important to me. Can I work it in? Imagine the payoffs of doing this activity. Imagine the sense of accomplishment, the sense of personal power, the fun, the lightness, the financial payoff, the health payoff, whatever it is. Bring that into the light. Imagine what it would be like if you don't do this. The continued stress, sense of low vitality, the continued lack of health and energy. What will it be like if you never get to this? Develop an action plan. Make it real. So often we wish things. And as long as it's out there kind of as a wish, it doesn't have a sense of reality. It doesn't give us something concrete to plan. Once we start to create a plan, it takes on a different life, a different level of importance. Break the task into doable steps. Don't try to eat the elephant in one step, one bite. You know, there are two ways to measure these steps. One is time. So you can say, I'm going to spend a particular chunk of time on this project, on this activity. And however much you get done on it in that chunk of time is what you get done for that sitting. That's a way to measure progress or to chunk down progress. Another is to say, I'm going to complete this aspect. So, you know, you can say, I'm going to go and walk for 20 minutes, or you can say, I'm going to walk for a mile. Either one is fine, but it gives you a sense of a block and a sense of knowing when you've been successful. Set goals, and I call them SMART goals. It might be familiar to some of you. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-framed. And we tend to set goals at work, but not so much in our personal lives. But it's important as a way to motivate us, as a way to measure our success, as a way to know if we're on track. Ask for help. Don't try to do it alone. Other people usually love to help. They can provide resources, support, information, the time that you need. Use a calendar system for all areas of your life. I know a lot of people who have a separate calendar for their work life and their non-work life. And it tends to be really stressful because if you're trying to make plans for your personal life while you're at work, you can't, or you plan tentatively and then maybe need to reschedule. And having two calendars can create a lot of stress and a lot of delay, a lot of extra work. So use a calendar system, use the same calendar system for all areas. And speaking of calendars, make appointments with yourself. Schedule time to work on your big rocks. Put that time in your calendar just as you would with a meeting with a meeting with someone else. And then honor it just as you would honor an appointment with someone else. I know for me, if there's a blank spot in my calendar and a client or a friend wants something, even though I was planning on doing some work there, because I didn't put it in my calendar, because I didn't block off the time, I will preempt that plan with something someone else asks for. So make appointments with yourself. Use the 4D system. 4D system is do, delegate, dump, or delay. So when something comes along in one of the other than two, in quadrant 1, 3, or 4, ask yourself, is this something that you are going to need to do? You can do it quickly. Just do it and get it out of the way. Or ask yourself, is this something I could delegate? And to whom? And if it's at work, it might be a subordinate, a coworker. If it's at home, it might be a child, a neighbor, someone you could hire to do it, or dump it. Assess it and look and say, this doesn't need to be done. This isn't important. This is not a good use of time. I'm not doing it. Or delay it. You can agree to do it, but not now. Yes, I can do that for you, but not until tomorrow or next week. And sometimes when you delay things, they go away on their own. Go public. Use an accountability partner. It's really easy for us to blow ourselves off. It's really easy for us not to follow up on our commitments to ourselves. But when we've let other people know that we're going to do it, it's really embarrassing to come back and say, oh, no, I didn't do it. So let people know you're taking a different direction. Let people know you're taking a stand for doing something. Get someone on board with you who will do it with you, who will check in with you. You know, for so many people, trying to get back into balance is about getting exercise or eating healthy. And it's really easy to roll over when the alarm goes off in the morning and say, I don't feel like going to the gym this morning. But if you know someone's going to be there waiting for you, you're much less likely to press the snooze button. Accountability partners can be really powerful. Partners in crime to help you be successful in getting balance. And finally, stop trying and do it. And I know that sounds harsh, but if there were $2 million at the end of the successful completion of this initiative, of this goal, I have a feeling that somehow you'd figure out how to do it. You'd stop trying and you'd make it happen. So believe that your life, your health, your happiness, your fulfillment is worth $2 million. And commit to making it happen.
Cindy, just to let you know, we have crossed the halfway point with the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Here are some things that will help you to eliminate those not important things, those things at the bottom of the matrix, the things in Q3 and Q4. Before you begin an activity, something that you're initiating or something that someone requested of you, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Often we do things out of habit. We do things because we think other people expect it of us, but we've never really checked it out. We do things because that's the way it's always been done. So why am I doing this? What would happen if I didn't do this? Would it really be bad? Sometimes it's a good idea to try. Just don't do it and see if there are any ramifications. Or ask other people, what would happen if I didn't do this? Is there someone else who could or should do this task? And again, delegate, train someone else, family member, other employees. Does this activity support a valued goal? Is this moving me closer to where I want to be? And again, we very seldom stop to ask that question. We operate on autopilot, on adrenaline. Is this activity necessary? Who says so? Ask yourself, what's the best use of my time right now? I find myself having to ask that question when I'm, true confession, sort of stuck in Facebook mode. And I think to myself, what's the best use of my time right now? And sometimes it's just taking a break and being in Facebook. Other times, most often, not so much. But it's important to ask the question and to redirect to say, what's the one thing I should be doing? Get conscious of how you're spending your time so that you can make conscious choices about it. Some of the things that really get in our way of finding the time to create balance are time wasters. And time wasters are things over which we have far more control than we think we do. So I want to walk you through some of those and give you a sense of how you can gain some more control. So the first is interruptions. So we often will allow people to stop in, interrupt us, ask us questions, take us away from what we're focused on, just because they're darkening our doorstep. It is okay to say, I can't talk to you right now. Could you come back later? And maybe set a time. That's your responsibility to manage your interruptions. And I have one client who, one of their teams had a code. They had the hat code. And if one of the members of the team was wearing a hat while they were in their office, it meant, please don't interrupt me. And people all knew the code. So find a way to make clear when you don't want to be interrupted. Find a way to be able to say, please not now, come back later, or I'll get back to you later. Procrastination is another thing that we have more control over than we think. When we procrastinate, it's usually because we don't know how to start, we're overwhelmed, it seems like too big a project. So by breaking down the project into small bites, by putting it in our calendar and honoring it, we can eliminate the time waster of procrastination. Perfectionism wastes our time when we just try to make perfect things that are good enough. We need to get started. We need to get moving. A draft may be a draft. Things don't all have to be perfect. Meetings. Do you have to go to all the meetings you're invited to? Do you have to hold all the meetings that you hold? Again, sometimes we need to ask, is my attendance necessary? Could I just come for the part that's relevant to me? If I'm running a meeting, do I have a clear agenda? Am I being efficient? Do I have the people there that need to be there? Am I prepared? Am I asking them to come prepared? Email, internet, and phone. If you still have that audible signal that says you've got mail turned on, turn it off. It is such a time waster. Who can resist checking to see who's sending you mail if there's an audible tone when you get one? You don't have to answer the phone just because it rings. Turn it off. That's what voicemail is for. Now, I don't mean that you shouldn't respond. You shouldn't be paying attention to these things, but know when you can let it go and know when you need to be responsive. Our own inability to say no. There are lots of ways to say no. You can say, oh, I wish I could, but I can't. I wish I could help you. I can't, but maybe Mary down the hall could help you. I can't do it now, but maybe later. I can't do this, but I could do that instead. So lots of different ways to say no without feeling like the Grinch. Our own lack of discipline. Again, we've talked a little bit about that. Setting goals, being accountable, making dates. A lack of planning or prioritizing. We don't really know what to do first. We don't put it in our calendars. We don't have a game plan. Disorganization and clutter. A cluttered desk can sometimes lead to a cluttered mind. When we have open space, when we've cleaned up the space around us, it gives us a sense of more vastness and more energy. Lack of delegation or ineffective delegation is a time waster. Fatigue or feeling overwhelmed. When we're not getting enough rest, when we're not renewing our energy, when we're feeling overwhelmed, we're stressed. We don't bring our best to the task at hand. Things take longer and the quality is not as good. Both time wasters. Lack of effective systems, whether it's big file systems or computer system technology. And crises. Now, certainly there are crises that are completely out of our control, but there are many crises that come out of a lack of planning, procrastination, fatigue. So we need to look at where we might be creating our own crises that might not be necessary. So let me just give you a final wrap-up of these 8 secrets to smoothing out the ride. I've given you a lot of information, and let's see if we can just summarize. Clarify your big rocks. What's the most important to you that would help give you a greater sense of personal power, energy, control, and balance? Identify how you spend your time now. Create a vision for each of the important areas of your life. Really sink into what it would be like to have more balance. Focus on one thing at a time so you don't get overwhelmed. Determine the steps required to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Break it down. Align the resources, the support, and the systems you need to be successful. Honor yourself and your commitments to yourself. Create small celebrations. Every time you take an inch along the way, celebrate. Congratulate yourself. Feel good about it. Don't wait until the very end or you'll be so discouraged. I think about weight loss. If you need to lose 50 pounds and you wait till you've lost the 50 pounds to give yourself any credit and celebrate, it's going to be a long road. So celebrate, congratulate yourself for every inch you take. So balance is a choice. It's not an easy one, but it is a choice. And I certainly hope that you have gotten enough today to see that you have more control over your circumstances than you might have thought. And I hope that these tips and tools and strategies help you see how you can take control and that you will take control so you can have more balance in your life. If you'd like to get these resources, the wheel and the as soon as the target worksheet, and you go to my website, CindyLochranCoaching.com, and in the top right you'll see a green tab. Click to subscribe, and you pull that tab down and you enter your name and your email. It'll take you to a page with lots of resources, those being 2 of them, lots of resources that you might like to use to get more balance and feel more personal power in your life. So I would encourage you to do that. And I want to leave you with this. Peace does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. And to me, that's what balance will bring you. So I want to thank you for being here today, and I want to see from Eric if we have any questions from the audience, from the listeners. Eric?
Great. Well, thank you very much, Cindy. I know I certainly have a wheel that needs a lot of work. It's not as round as it possibly should be. So I certainly learned a number of things from this presentation. If you are a participant and have a question for Cindy that you would like us to answer, please go ahead and submit that to us using the question panel in your control panel. But for right now, Cindy, I have one lined up for you, and it's, is it better to simplify my life or just better organize all of the things that I have going on?
That's an interesting question. To organize your life would be to simplify your life, but I don't think it's possible to know how to organize your life until you know what's really, really important. And so I would say that organizing your life is a step towards simplifying your life. And it's only really going to be effective if you first have figured out what's important, what's really important.
Well, great. Here's another one that's come in. My wife and I have very different ideas about managing our time. How can we reconcile that?
Yeah, that's common, that people that work together or live together sort of operate on different time levels. So I think the important thing is to have a conversation about it and to make your preferences known and figure out how you can honor both. And rather than, what happens with a lot of couples is that rather than making each other wrong about it, you're doing it wrong, I'm doing it right, just honor that it's different and see what the differences look like and how you can both have your needs met.
Great. Here's another.
Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy. I didn't mean to jump in on
No,
you there.
go ahead.
Should I involve my kids in this process, or is this too much for them to understand?
Oh man, absolutely. If you involve your kids in this process, so many great things will happen. So first of all, they will learn to appreciate being balanced, making choices about how they spend their time. They'll learn how to do it. They'll learn how to set priorities and really look at what's important. They'll learn these life skills, and you'll be able to, we talked about delegating and training and engaging other people. They're your downline. I know my kids are. When I've run out of time to do something, I can ask my kids to do it, and it both frees me up and empowers them. So absolutely, it's a family affair at home, and it's a team affair at work. And it really creates a tremendous sense of mutual respect for what's going on for people. So yeah, this is not a secret you keep.
Great. Here's one more, Cindy. I feel like if I take time to relax, I'm wasting that time. How can I change my feelings about that?
A great question. I used to have that in spades. I used to not be able to read, even if it was work material. I couldn't read in the middle of the day because I thought I was being a lazy slug. So what I did was I changed the language that I used with myself. And I found myself, instead of saying, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing for a little while, or I'm going to sit here and relax, I actually changed what I said to myself, and I said, I'm going to sit here and recharge my batteries. And it just felt like oh, I'm doing something productive by using that language. Over time, what I learned was, after pushing myself to do it anyway, to sit and relax for 10 minutes, to go for a walk in the middle of the day, to do one of my very guilty pleasures, which I can do because I work at home, taking a nap sometimes when I'm just fuzzy. And I don't suggest you do that under your desk at work, but is I learned that when I did that, I came back so much more resourceful, so much more focused and creative, that it was well worth the 20 minutes that I took. So it's a mindset shift, and it's a prove to yourself that it's worth it, that there is a really significant ROI to taking a break and relaxing. It's a great question and a hard one.
Here's one more, Cindy. Regarding making appointments with yourself, I've tried that before, but it's very hard to keep appointments I make to do fun things or things I don't really have to do. More important things almost always come up. How do I change that?
Um, well, it depends on your definition of more important and why it's more important. So, is it more important to someone else or to you? So I think that part of it is, not knowing exactly what it is. It may be just taking a stand for what I want to do is important. And I can do what this other thing is another time. I can help you figure out another way to get it done. I can do it a little less than you'd like me to. So I think the big thing is to recognize that those things that we do for ourselves are important, and we don't need to defend and justify them. If I had an appointment with Eric and someone else came along and asked me to do something, I wouldn't say that the thing that you asked me to do is more important than the thing that Eric asked me to do. You have to hold it as really important, or it'll never, your big rocks will just never get put into the mix. I sort of go on a rant about that because I think that we don't hold the things that we do for ourselves as important as we need to.
Great. Cindy, we have one more question I think we have time for, and that's, what changes do you see with businesses bringing work-life balance into their strategic planning?
It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. I think that people are really figuring out that we don't compartmentalize. We don't check our personal lives at the door when we go to work. We don't check our work lives at the door when we go home. I'm seeing more and more organizations have flexible hours, meditation rooms, exercise benefits, EAPs that offer programs for balance. And I think that people are recognizing that the churn that we've lived with, the stress levels, the imbalance, is not sustainable. And it's a little bit now trial and error for organizations to see what works and how it works. And it's based on trust that people are not going to take advantage of the flexibility, but I think it's a wonderful thing. I think we're going to see some real changes and some increase in engagement, increase in productivity, increase in satisfaction. So I'm very pleased to hear when I hear that organizations are doing that.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the presentation for today. We'd like to certainly thank Cindy for being here and guiding us through this wonderful topic and discussion. We hope you'll join us again next month when we continue our monthly webinar series. And Cindy, is there anything else you would like to say before we close for today?
Just honor yourself. Do this work so that you can find greater balance, greater energy, greater personal power, greater satisfaction.
Well, great. Well, thank you, everyone. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.